Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast series. Welcome back to the audio or the video series. But before we get started today's show, I just want to do a shout out to my sponsors, Job Search QOD. Job Search Queensland is a company that is helping people find employment by giving them the tips and tricks that's needed to go into an interview, how to prepare their CVs, or how to pretty much stand out in a very busy crowd post-COVID to be able to find that ideal job. And fundamentally, at the time we live today, that is actually very important for some people out there. So you can find them at jobsearchqod.com. But back to the show today. And today I'm joined by someone that I just said off air. I've known about and watched the story and the movie maybe 20, 30, 40 times in the last 20 years. I'm joined by Jimmy, the rookie Morris, someone who showed what can be done when you actually follow a dream, even though you didn't believe you had the permission, the authority, or actually had pretty much the lifespan to take on that dream. He did it and became one of the oldest rookies in the Major League Baseball at the age of 35, after pretty much taking on a challenge with high school kids that led him there. And this story has become known as the Rookie movie that was performed by Dennis Quaid in 2002, and definitely one of my go-to movies in the last 20 years, maybe 3 to 4 times a year, that I go and watch and just remember what can be done if we're willing to overcome our fears and step into that box that we don't know will happen next. So, Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
So as I said, to anyone that's just listening or watching at the moment, might not know a little bit about your background story. You are big and famous, but there's still people out there that haven't heard the story about that. So I just wanted to do a little segment about, you had grown up very successful around baseball, very successful around your football as well, but you're always pushing around the baseball side into your late teens, got into single A, trying to get into the majors, and you got into your late 20s, and sports injuries and body and health just didn't play fair. And you ended up being sort of the path that a lot of us would take, right? Our dreams, unfortunately, couldn't come to it. You went back to what you were really good at. You were teaching and inspiring kids you're coaching at Regan County High in Big Lake, Texas. And your coaching took on a baseball team that had, 3 wins over 3 seasons, no expectations. And at that moment is almost when your second life or your destiny started.
Absolutely. When the movie takes place, it starts with the nuns, right?
Yeah.
And the next scene you have is us getting pulverized 15-1 and 15-0.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason for that. On my way to practice in 1999, when it starts, the athletic director and head football coach at Reagan County High School pulls me aside to tell me, you have taken these kids as far as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents are losers. The kids are losers. They're never going anywhere. They're not going to be successful. They're probably not even going to graduate high school. So if you want these kids to win, it's not going to happen. And then he put his finger in my chest, which every adult loves when another adult does that, right?
Yeah.
He puts his finger in my chest and he goes, you may be a great baseball coach, but you're always going to come in last to people like me because you're too nice. I know how to step on people to get to be where I want to be. Unbeknownst to me, 2 of my kids are around the corner where I couldn't see them, and they heard this. Now, this is not the guy who hired me 2 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
This guy came in later. And in 90 seconds, he destroyed 2 years of work. So when the movie starts with us playing, the first 2 games are 15-1 and 15-0. And I don't know what to draw upon to help these kids at first. And so I sent them down a left field line. I stood on home plate. And because of my grandparents who I live with from 15 to 18, I've got a lot of faith. And I don't push it on people, but for me, faith is strong. I stood on home plate and I just said a prayer. What can I do to help these kids? How can I get them to see their worth? How can I get them to dream? How can I push these kids without breaking them?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was simple. Go down there and teach them what your grandparents taught you. And it was almost immediate. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. I go down there. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody's paying attention. I start talking about hopes and dreams and goals. And I said, you guys got to go out and live life. You can't let life live you. Don't let anybody else dictate to you what you're going to do with yours. And that's what turned into, well, what about your dreams? And I'm like, you know what? I tried that. And now I'm 35 and I should be getting out of baseball. And I look like a baseball scout, not a baseball player at 6'2" and 260 pounds. I said, and I've had 9 surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
One at 28, in which the doctor said, you will never, ever pitch again, physically impossible. And so I'm arguing back and forth the kids a little bit. And they said, Coach, we know your heart's still in it, and you're telling us to chase our dreams. Why don't you do it? And I said, because I'm old. And they said, no, you teach us how to play the game the right way. We know what the other team's going to do before they do it. When you throw us batting practice, we can't hit it. And I said, that's because you can't hit. And well, if we start winning, you try out. And I'm going through all the reasons, including the doctor reasons, the medical reasons. I can't pitch. 85% of my deltoid gone. It can't happen. What if we win a district championship, which these kids in their lifetime had never seen baseball won at this school? And I said, if you win, I'll find a tryout somewhere. In the back of my head, I'm going, you are old and fat, and this is going to be more embarrassing than you ever thought. Yeah. And that was the bet.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing to see that moment. You know, so Jimmy, I grew up in baseball myself. I don't play it anymore. I retired a handful of years ago. Played over back in South Africa. My dad actually coached me throughout most of my junior years. And funny enough is a lot of so kids my age now, so we are all literally the age when you became at 35, and they still turn to my dad to this day as 35-year-old adults, and they still call him coach. I've never heard them ever call him by his name. They still call him coach, and because obviously we don't live in South Africa anymore, so they'll message him to go, hey, how's coach doing? Is he keeping well? But I can understand that moment of, you know, playing through as a kid and having it. And that was one of the biggest things, what resonated with your story to what a lot of my bringing up was, we also had a group of kids, you know, we weren't as down and as problematic as what you would have had in that situation, but we were a bit of a wild bunch. We were a whole lot of kids that were hot-headed, and we thought we were better than we were, and we had no sort of humility around that. And my old man, being a military man, came in, he played baseball all his years, he knew the rules, but he also knew how to instigate rules, and as you talk about, between these white lines. And I always remember funny stories, you know, as 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and he was coaching us, and the kids would be like, oh no, I don't want to coach today, I don't want to do coaching today, coach, I don't feel like it, I'm just going to sit out. And then my dad would turn around, because our field was close in the residential area, all the kids would walk. They would walk to the field and back home, whether it be 5-minute walk or an hour walk, because it was during the day, parents couldn't drop them off. So my dad was like, fine, you don't want to practice today, walk home. Go home and tell your folks that you don't want to be at practice today, and coach said you could go home. And then straight away, each kid is like, no, coach, no, that's fine. We'll practice. We'll run and we'll practice, right? So it's through those, you know, those moments we see it, and I can totally understand where you sat there as a kid, seeing my dad be in that moment and seeing the challenges on both sides. Can totally respect that. But I can imagine in your situation going, there's no chance these kids, not saying you didn't want it for them, but there's no chance they're going to win the regional champs, as they haven't had, you know, more than a handful of wins over a couple of years. And then as well, the back of your head of, well, if they do, this is going to be embarrassing. Sorry to interrupt the current show, but just to let you know, if you're enjoying what you've seen, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. So next time another episode comes out, you'll be able to see it first. Back to the show.
Yeah, the kids were amazing. At that point, we made the bet. Mm-hmm. They start winning, then they start winning by a lot. And over the next 3 months, these kids who couldn't hit me are now hitting me all over the ballpark. I can't get these kids out. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to go to a major league tryout and try to impress somebody because you can't even get 16-year-olds out. And we ended up winning a district championship. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the best sights I've ever seen. And it was the night that we won. We were down 3-1 in the last inning. History would dictate we're not going to come back and win. But I watched these kids score 6 runs in the last inning, then hold the other team to 0. We win 7-3. And I watch a group of kids celebrating an accomplishment that not even they thought they could accomplish. And for the first time in my life, and you're a man, I'm a man, we get this. Sometimes we grow up a little bit later. For the first time in my life, at the age of 35, I got the major lesson that my grandfather had tried to instill at me from 15 to 18. It's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about we. What can we do as a team? And everybody has to do their job. It's not just the guys on the field. It's the guys on the bench who have to be ready to go in. It's the coaches, the athletic trainers, the people who keep the books, the people who call the game over the loudspeaker. It is everybody involved. And I think one of the biggest things for me was watching these kids do something that they did not think they could do, and then sitting back and enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most amazing thing to me. And it was incredibly satisfying to see them prove other coaches wrong. And I loved it.
I can imagine, you know, as a dad and as a coach myself, so I coach little 9 and 10-year-olds across what you guys would call soccer and cricket as well. And I've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 years. So I followed the same kids from the age of 5, 6, 7 up into 10. So it's not teenagers, but I can say there is a lot of humility in those moments. And my greatest moments through that is when my team, not when I've done something well as a coach, you know, you always want to go, oh, I said to them to do it. But when the team puts something together and they pull off, and it could be only just one win of that year, but it was one win when there was no expectation that they would ever get it to it. And you turn around and go, you know, that is amazing, because you turn around and look at those kids, whatever age they are. And for that moment in their life, that is the best moment they've had. And to a lot of them, unfortunately, and the life we live in, it is the only greatest moment they've ever had, because we live in a society where we don't give kids, or we don't give young adults more opportunity to stand there for once and shout and scream and laugh and cry and go, hey, this is an amazing moment.
Yeah. You know, society today has me in knots because we're not letting kids be kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the ones who are really good are on travel teams and they go all over the place. And the ones who are mediocre, they have nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, let alone the ones who really can't play, because young men and young women develop at different ages. And sometimes the kid who's not good enough to make a team now is going to end up being a superstar in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
We don't know, because of their maturity level, when that growth spurt is going to kick in. And so we prejudge and we look at people and we go, wow. And there's a big divide in that. And it's not about color. It's not about race or anything. It's just about what we have preconceived in our minds, and we're going, they'll never be good. They're not good now. They're not going to be good. And that is a kid who will end up turning around and being awesome.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So let's get back to the path, right? So you guys win the championship at the moment. You know, through the story and through your book and everything else, the kids come up to you and say to you, you know, it's your time, where there's a sort of a realization in yourself going, oh yes, there was something I agreed with that has just come to fruition, and I've got enough follow on with this. And I can imagine that feeling at that moment, and in the next steps actually going to the tryouts as well, what you'd been going through.
Yeah, I drove home. It was a 4-hour bus ride. And for 4 hours, I drove thinking, you have got to be kidding me. I actually have to go do this. Because in my mind, I'm like, you weren't good when you were supposed to be good.
Yeah.
And every time you started doing something, you had a surgery. And then we got set back. And I thought I knew more than doctors did. And I wanted to do it my way. And I never listened to anybody. But now to get a second chance from a group of kids who, when I pushed them, they pushed back, it became incredible. So for that tryout, I go to my hometown of Brownwood, Howard Payne University, Tampa Bay Devil Rays, now the Tampa Bay Rays. Doug Gassaway's a scout. He's about 70. I've got my 3 kids in tow, 8, 4, and 1. Nobody will even play catch with me when I get there. All these young guys are like 18 to 24. Most of them have their parents there. I'm there with my kids. The parents are my age. I'm like, oh no. I go up and I sign up. Gassaway, the scout, looks up and he goes, how many kids you bring the tryout? I looked down at my 3 kids. I said, I brought 3. He said, no, 2 tryout. And I said, I brought me. I made a promise to a group of kids that if they did something nobody thought they could do, I would try to do something I know I can't do. It will be embarrassing, humiliating, but I'm going to get a great laugh out of it, and so are you. I'm doing this. If you don't let me throw, I've got to find somewhere else, because I made a promise and I'm living up to my word. And when I get done, he looks up at me, and that time I had hair and it was like black. And he goes, why didn't you just shave your head like every other coach? And I'm like, where were you 3 months ago, man? And he goes, I'm gonna let you throw, but you're gonna throw last. These guys are here for serious business. They have to run, they have to throw, they have to hit. He goes, when they run, do you want to run? I said, I do not run. I'm a coach. I'll help you time them. He did not think that was funny. And so for 4 hours, I sit around and I'm changing diapers. We're playing games and I'm watching these other kids try out. And I am the last person to try out. Almost everybody else is putting their equipment back in their cars. He calls me out to the mound, hands me a baseball. How many pitches do you need to warm up? I said, none. I would just like to pitch quickly and run off the field, hopefully remembering to grab my kids. And he giggles at me. He goes back behind the backstop, picks up his radar gun. Now the young kid catching me is 19. Now this is June 19th, 1999. This kid just turned 19 that day. Been out of high school for 2 weeks. Gives me a sign for a fastball. I wind up, I throw it. It's perfect pitch. I'm 35. I'm old. I'm fat. I'm like, that is a good pitch. I look up to see this scout shaking his radar gun. I'm like, I do not even throw hard enough to register. That is more embarrassing than I thought. I get up to about 60 pitches. Everybody else threw 20. I'm like, what is going on? I finally get done. The 19-year-old kid catches me, runs up to me. He goes, sir, which hurt my feelings quite a bit. He goes, you threw better than anybody today. And I said, son, that's because nobody here could throw. He goes, no, you had them talking back there. I said, yeah, I'm sure I did. Thank you. And I get my kids in the car. It's hot. It's Texas. Like Australia, it's like 9,000 degrees in the summer. Turn the air on. Gasaway, the scout, meets me at my car. He goes, I remember you. 15 years ago at Ranger Junior College, you were a football star that everybody wanted to make a picture out of. I said, yes, sir. He goes, back then you were tall and thin. You threw 87 or 88. I said, yes, sir. He goes, well, I don't know what you've done your time off aside from eat, but the first pitch you threw without warming up was 98. I'm like, wow. I threw 12 consecutive pitches at 98 with crazy movement on my fastball. And he's like, I don't know what you've done, but I got to call this in. Because if I don't call in somebody, and you're old. He goes, by the way, when you signed up, you were 35. Now you're 32. And I said, well, if I come back again, can I be 29? And he laughed at that. And I get home, it was 12 messages. I call my high school kids. This is where adults have to remember that if you're going to teach something, it's not just talking the talk, it's walking the walk. Because in my mind, I've got a job in the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth at a great big high school, assistant football coach, head baseball coach, science teacher. That's my future. That's what I'm good at. I'm successful at that. This other thing of baseball, never been successful at that. And I call my high school kids. I said, they want me to come back and throw again. And they said, coach, you told us if we ever had our dream in front of us, you'd chase it. And I said, well, I was lying. And they start giggling and I giggle. And 2 days later, it rained so bad they had to hand me a brand new baseball every single pitch, sliding up to my knee in mud, 98. My 3 kids are there. Half my baseball team is there. I signed a contract, and that is my journey as a 35-year-old man going back into baseball.
That's amazing. To anyone that doesn't know the sport of baseball as much, and there would be, I mean, Jimmy, how many people could throw 12 pitches in a row at 98? At any one stage, a handful maybe?
A handful back in 1999. Now everybody's so concentrated. You have a lot of kids. You just send them out there and they throw gas. But back then, not a whole lot. Like Billy Wagner for the Astros was lefty. He threw hard. John Rocker for the Braves. He threw hard. And then me as a lefty throwing 98 to 102. And where did it come from?
Yeah. I mean, that's the craziness if you look at it, that at 35, and I can understand the whole with the kids. Like I said, I played through my teenage years. I was pretty decent. A lot of my friends went up from South Africa, got scouted over into America, into single A, double A ball. We had scouts even coming over to South Africa. So I was in that vibe as 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And I can imagine being there as a 17, 18-year-old and a dad, to me, would perceived as a dad would come up and go, okay, I'm going to play against you guys. I could totally understand the whole, hold on, what is going on here? But I can also appreciate, like you said in this, in your book and everything else, once you'll get into your 60 pitches, when you started, everyone was literally packing up and leaving. But by the end of it, a lot of people were paying you attention because what you were doing, you weren't, running bases fast or hitting the ball out of the field as everyone else could do. And you were throwing something that people shouldn't be doing at your age, and only a handful of people were doing it in the league. So that was something that so unique that everyone, irrespective of age, would have gone, what the heck is going on here? Where did that come from? And that's why I can imagine the thoughts through those scouts that night when you were around, when they were all talking to each other. I would love to have been the fly on the wall to see what they were saying to each other, to go, okay, how do we explain this? How do we tell the club, that there's a 35-year-old, he doesn't look like a baseball player because he enjoys his parents of his kids' baseball team's food too much, but he's thrown faster than anyone in the league. So yeah, it would have been a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was interesting. Right when I signed, they sent me to Florida for like 3 weeks to get in shape. 3 weeks, the best diet I never want to be on again. 30 pounds lighter in 3 weeks. And every time I would pitch, all these guys from the front office would come, and they're just sitting back there shaking their head yes, and then shaking their head like, I don't believe this. And it was just really cool. And I asked one of them, I said, am I crazy for being here? I said, this was a bet I made with my kids to try out, not to actually play, but to try out. And he goes, if I had your arm, I would be up there right now. Yeah. And so, man, that was the start of a journey. And it was all because of a group of teenagers who, when everybody else counted them out, they believed in themselves. And then they believed in me. And then they taught me that we're never too young or too old to achieve our dreams. And I think that is a cool story.
It is. It's Jimmy, it's amazing. So you did the tryouts, and it's 3 months later. So you go to AA, I believe it is, up in AAA, and then within 3 months, you sit in at Arlington, at Texas, against the Texas Rangers, called up for the Tampa, for the Devil Rays, or the Rays as at the moment. Talk me through that thought when you were called and told you coming up, and it's to you, you're not playing for Texas, but you're playing at home.
Yeah, it is my home state, my favorite ballpark. And for the first time in 3 months, I'm seeing my high school kids who I've not seen in 3 months, but I'm also seeing my kids for the first time in 3 months who I'd only been away from for baseball tournaments. And so for me, that in itself was awesome. And they're getting to see me in a big league jersey with my name and my number on my back. And I'm sitting on the field, not in the stands. And I'm talking to other big league guys about how to pitch to the guys I might be facing later. And in my mind, I'm like, there is no way they're putting me in. I've thrown 3 days in the AAA playoffs. They're going to let me sit here and enjoy my first day in the big leagues. And for 8 innings, I did. And in the 8th inning, they're like, hey, warm up. And I'm like, okay, they just want me to warm up in front of 40,000 people. That's cool. Hey, you're in. No, wait a minute. What? And when I opened the door from the bullpen to go into the mound, everything I'd been through that whole road of successes and failures, the ups and downs of life, raising kids, coaching kids, marriage, and everything that goes along with just living flashed in front of my eyes. And by the time I stepped my spikes onto the dirt of the mound of the ballpark in Arlington, I'd come to one conclusion. I would not change one thing about my journey because that made me who I was. At 19, if I would have got that dream, I would have taken it for granted and been a spoiled brat. But at 35, knowing how hard life is, man, I took everything in. I talked to everybody on both teams. Johnny Oates, the opposing manager, let 150 people in the game that day that had ties to me. After the game, and I strike out Royce Clayton, the ball kid from the other clubhouse comes over with this sock full of baseballs. And he goes, hey, some other guys in the other locker room, they want your autograph. And I'm like, who? And they're like, Pudge Rodriguez and Juan Gonzalez. And I'm like, what? It was the most surreal moment. And it just, all because of a group of kids. If I would have listened to the doctors and I would have listened to myself, I'm not going to that tryout. I'm not ever trying to play again. I failed at that. 6 years in the minors, 6 surgeries, you're done, you're out, you're gone. Now I'm teaching kids how to play. And then 11 years later, I'm back in the game, and I'm at the elite level where I'm facing the best guys in the game. And that is incredible. And when people ask you, what did it feel like? It was electric.
Mm-hmm.
Everything just happened very quickly, and it was just incredible to be there. Going to Fenway, going to Yankee Stadium, all of it was just amazing.
You know, it truly is. You know, like you say, at 30, you know, at 35, I'm just a couple of years past that. To achieve what was always your dream, I can't imagine. You know, we always as kids. You know, to me it was originally as a teenager. Yeah, I just played in the Major League Baseball. Then I went into rugby, so that I was playing for either the Springboks for now, playing for the All Blacks in New Zealand, and I couldn't imagine that. But one thing as well, which is really unique, Jimmy, with your situation was that put you in the majors. You what's it, almost 2 years you got across that. But it started that path of pretty much of what you're doing today, and a realization of being a motivational speaker, going out and showing people and telling people that we need to be brave enough to step into that next box. We need to have the faith to trust what is put in front of us, that we can overcome it. So that moment of you achieving your goal and your dream of life has actually allowed you now to motivate others and so many people around the world to chase theirs and not be fearful of it as well.
Lawrence, I'm going to share something else with you. In 2001, I was with the Dodgers, and I went out to LA to work out during the winter. And I was either at Dr. Job's clinic having everybody watch me throw and lift so they could keep up with me, or I was out at Dodger Stadium hitting, running, throwing, and everything else. Perfect shape. In 5 days, I went from LA to Vero Beach, where they still had spring training at the time in Florida. Mm-hmm. And something happened in 5 days. And because of those kids in Big Lake, I learned that nothing is impossible. Now, another thing that is even bigger and scarier comes along. When I get to Florida, I can't judge a ball being thrown at me. Mm-hmm. I teach kids how to bunt, how to catch the ball with the bat, and now I can't bunt. Now I'm having trouble running. And if I throw the ball up there at 100 miles an hour and somebody hits it back at me, 110, I might get hit in the mouth. I don't know that I can get out of the way. That started a path of over the next 20 years of speaking, yes, and enjoying it. Something I never thought I would do is get up in front of a group of people and speak. And I've spoken to 4 people in a penthouse in a business place in Chicago. And I've spoken to 25,000 people at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. I mean, just dynamic, never missed speeches. But during that period of time, 70 surgeries, finally a diagnosis of Parkinson's to the point where they had to put a deep brain stimulator in my brain. And this was even a bigger hurdle than coming back at 35. But I think the baseball and those kids prepared me for the journey that was going to happen then. And 5 years ago, I'm walking with a cane around the block, dragging my leg. And last year, during the middle of COVID, I had my deep brain stimulator taken out because something happened, and they redid all the brain scans. They redid all the physical tests. They're like, you no longer have Parkinson's. We don't know what happened. You're supposed to get sicker, not better.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife had to start traveling with me because I couldn't even button the buttons of my shirt. And what a horrible journey, and what a horrible diagnosis for a lot of people. And I'm so glad that I was able to get out of it. And now, 99% of people are like, man, God is good. And then there's that 1% who've watched a loved one struggle with it and get sicker and sicker and sicker. And they're actually mad at me. And they're like, how could you say you had Parkinson's? I watched who I loved and they died. I'm like, you weren't with me. I'm not been around to watch your journey, but you haven't been around to watch mine. You weren't there during the 3 brain surgeries and everything else that I had done. So you don't know what I've been through. But I'm at the point now where I run 5 to 7 miles a day. I lift weights. I don't look back, and I want to live and I want to move, and life is awesome again. But I had the pain spectrum of Parkinson's where you get a headache in January, like January 1st. June 30th, the headache would break and you're like, oh, this is what life is supposed to be like. Then on July 3rd, you have a headache again and it lasts till December. And so I had the pain spectrum of Parkinson's, and had to have my teeth redone because during my sleep, I would have nightmares so bad that I'm acting out my dreams. My wife is scared to sleep next to me. And I pretty much grinded my teeth to nubs.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's a horrible journey. Any autoimmune disease, any chronic illness, it takes the life out of people, not just the people who have it, but the people who take care of the people who have it. And so I learned a lot from those kids in Big Lake. And I also learned from them, nothing is impossible.
Yep.
And here I am. And I want people to know we can get well. Look for a way. Nothing's impossible. We can dream that dream and go out and do it.
I totally agree, Jim. I can't imagine what you went through. I had my own scare 2 years ago. Actually, 2 years ago, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor, golf ball size brain tumor myself. Only got diagnosed, and within diagnosing, to 6 weeks later, I was in the surgery. I actually went on into the surgery on my birthday. So the 26th of June on my birthday every year, I don't just celebrate my birthday, but actually my actual reborn day. And successful surgery, obviously. I still live with conditions going forward. Something that intrigued me when I went through and looked at, unfortunately, the issues I had, you got diagnosed with Parkinson related to CTE. Something that they couldn't put their hand on for my condition is what caused it, but there was a underlying feeling that it could have been across from CTE. I've played baseball, I've played rugby many of years. I've ended up multiple times each year for about 10 years with very intense concussions, broken noses, faces, and continuous head knocks. I played in the front row in rugby as well, so it's the most contact all the time. And it's sort of something that plays in the back of my head still now that we know about CTE. It's something that's been brought around, related to Parkinson's and other conditions, that there is days where I have a stress and a worry that when I get to 55, 65, that my conditions, the next stage of it's going to kick off. So it's something that I've got to very much pay attention to, but it's something that, because it's there, it also means I've got to pay attention to what I'm trying to achieve with my life and what I'm doing, right? I can't just sit back and go, okay, I think something's going to happen. I'll wait till it happens and then I'm going to live my life. It's sort of, hey, when that happens, you can't guarantee that there's anything post that. You can't guarantee that the life you're going to have past that is of any quality to anyone. So why waste their 5 years, 15 years, or 20 years that you could possibly have to that moment? And why waste that opportunity to try and be out there and help people, inspire people, just like you do as well?
Fear is absolutely crippling.
Mm-hmm.
And if we live in fear, we're not living, because then we're scared to do anything. And you played rugby, man. I played football with a helmet and I still had 30 concussions. You played without a helmet, and God bless you. I'm glad you're healthy now. But I also want you to go, I'm gonna whip this thing in the butt, man. I'm going to go live life to the fullest, because tomorrow is not guaranteed for anybody.
Yep.
And if we don't do what we can today to go and chase our dreams and help other people chase their dreams, then we're sitting still. If we're sitting still, other people are passing us by.
Mm-hmm.
If they're passing us by, they're going to get our dream and we're not going to get it. And so we need to stay in constant motion and keep moving towards a goal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just, as part of the show, I rewatched the movie this week. I've just finished reading your new book, Dream Makers. Thoroughly enjoy it. Anyone that's listening or watching, it's a must-go book. I'll also be getting my hand on a couple of books, and hopefully Jim will sign them for me, which I'll do in a big giveaway in the next couple of months as well. But there was two things outside of the story. There was two key points in the book that I wanted to talk about, and that to me I found really cool. The first one was the number 63, and then the second one from the book was the comment, "Stay humble." And those two moments. But I first want to talk to you about, as you said, you're a man of faith, you're a man of God. Doesn't mean that everyone else is, doesn't mean everyone else has to go down that path, but you've always believed in certain things and ways stuff is put in front of you. And then there was the story about the number 63, and I'd love for you to tell it to the audience about, looking back, there were some weird situations that couldn't really be explained without some sort of intervention or something else.
Absolutely. Man, I had 63 kids try out for my team that year, and in 1999. And I didn't even realize that until the guy who helped me write my first book, Joel Engel, he calls me one day, he goes, "Hey, how many kids do you have?" I said, 63. He goes, "Awesome, your number was 63 when you got to the big leagues." I said, "That's cool." And then he finds out about my best friend who passed away in 1994. And both of my best friends passed away in 1994, but one of them drove a school bus. And he said, "What was the number on John Mark's school bus?" And I had to go back and look at old pictures. And there's a picture of me and him standing behind his school bus after we'd washed out the vomit and everything else that gets on the bus when you have school age kids. And it was number 63. And I didn't remember that. And I was like, "You have to be kidding me."
Yeah.
Then I spoke at my church in Dallas when I lived there. And the pastor on Tuesday, I spoke there on Sunday. On Tuesday, I get a letter from me going, "In Preston Road, 63-year history, nobody's ever filled a church like you have." And I'm like, okay, that's kind of creepy now. I mean, something's going on. I don't get it. And these instances keep coming up. One day, I'm extremely tired because I'm going through all the Parkinson's. I'm driving to the airport myself. It was before Shauna started traveling with me. And so I leave the house at 3 a.m. I'm driving down Interstate 10 to get to San Antonio and go to the airport. And I'm like, "God, if this is what you want me to do, man, I need a sign because I am tired and I hurt and I don't know if I can do this." And I look up, and in the front of my pickup truck, I see the back end of an 18-wheeler. And it said, "Our most precious cargo sits 63 feet ahead." I was like, I get it. I'm going to Corpus Christi to do a speech again. I'm tired and I'm sick and I don't feel good. I have no energy. And I'm sitting there saying prayer, "God, if this is what you want me to do, man, let me know because I'm tired." And the flight attendant in the front was a Southwest flight. The flight attendant in the front meets at my aisle with the one in the back. And the one in the back goes, "Is everybody aboard?" And she said, "All 63 passengers are on board," right on my aisle. And I was like, I've stayed in so many places, like in South Dakota in the Black Hills, mile marker 63. I talked to 63 people and it was 63 degrees when I got there. I'm like, this is so cool, man. God is good. But then I've had bad people in my life too. And I'm like, all right, they're all into the 63 thing and they were totally horrible. And so I'm sitting on the plane one day and I'm just processing all this. And because of my grandparents, my faith is so strong that I was like, no, God's just letting me know that he's there, whether it's good or bad. That's what this is about. And 63 has continued to this day. And when I tell people about it, it happens to them. Now, people are going, "Oh, he's a numerologist." That is not what I am, man. Those are numbers of angels. And if people want to go look them up and you have faith, or even if you don't, you want to look it up, you go look up 6 and 3. And just think about that, because that number has been with us. It's been with my wife and I, and it's happened to her when she's been by herself when I've been traveling. She's like, "You're not going to believe this." They just keep coming. And so that, yes, 63. Now, to keep your humble, that was a very rough time in my life. In 2016, because in 70 surgeries in 20 years, you're either on opiates when they're unregulated. I never overtook them, but the doctors were just prescribing them left and right because of my pain. Before surgery, during surgery, and after surgery to get well. But that's not helping. I'm still in incredible pain. So I think, since I have a medical degree, and I don't, I thought I will add my own prescription of vodka. That will help me get over the pain. If I add that to the painkillers, that'll be good. And so the week of Christmas in 2016, I do not remember. So on the 27th of December, I find myself in rehab. Now here's a good picture for you. Picture a 52-year-old man being told to strip naked and do jumping jacks so they can see if drugs fall out of you. That's an ugly picture even for me. I avoid mirrors now. And here I am naked in front of other men doing naked jumping jacks. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I had a group of girls at my church, and I call them girls because that's what they want me to call them. They're my girls. They're 50 to 90, but they're my girls. They're not women. They're not ma'am. They're my girls. And they've prayed through me through all this, even through rehab. And I never detoxed. I watched everybody else get sick and have stuff come out of both ends constantly. And I never felt bad one day. And for those 30 days, I'm sitting there. And the first time I got to talk on the phone to my wife, I'm watching another person come in. I'm like, you would not believe the condition of this person. And my patient advocate looked at me and she goes, keep your humble. 2 weeks ago, that's what you look like. And I was like, ooh. And it was a gut punch. But you know what? We have this preconceived deal where we're supposed to judge people. And, oh, look what I'm wearing. But, ooh, look what they're wearing. That is, you know, and that's a learned behavior, and we need to stop that. And there were so many good people. And I will tell you this about rehab. Rehab, addiction does not care about men. It doesn't care about women. It doesn't care about black, white, red, purple, polka dot, gay, straight, old, young. It doesn't matter. If it gets you, it gets you. And I was sitting there with some of the people who had been to rehab 9 different times. And I was like, how could that happen? Now, my wing was a Christian wing. And so my counselor was a pastor on Sundays. And he pulls me into his office. He loves baseball like you and I do. He's been to every major league team, has stuff everywhere in his office from every different organization. And he pulls me in, he goes, love the movie. Dennis did great. Awesome story. Why are you here? And I said, I lost my way. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I didn't try to kill myself, but I wasn't trying to live either. I just stopped. And he said, well, was Jesus with you? I said, Jesus is always with me, man. We learned that from day one. He goes, so you're saying that Jesus was your co-pilot? And I said, absolutely. He goes, let me ask you a question. If you're in a vehicle and Jesus is with you, why is he not driving? What? And something clicked in my brain. I was like, wow. So at 52, for the first time in my life, I'm not worried about my wife. I'm not worried about my kids. I'm not worried about a job. I'm worried about Jimmy Morris, the human being. And I get to concentrate on me. And it's been 4 years and 7 months, and I haven't touched alcohol. I don't take pain pills because I decided I'm not going to have surgeries anymore because surgeries suck. And they suck the life out of you. And so, but alcohol free, not even tempted. The second day that I'm out of rehab, I go to a speaking event. My wife picks me up in Florida. We fly to Minnesota. I get out, and backstage, they have every kind of liquor imaginable with all the bottle caps off. And they're like, have whatever you want. Everybody else has been drinking all day. And I was like, oh, I'm good. And if you have a lot of faith, then you know there's good and bad, and there is good and evil, and there's light and there's dark. And the dark was tempting me, and I wasn't tempted at all. And I've not been tempted, and I could care less. And my kids are grown, they're adults now. So if they want to drink around me, I don't care, man. Drink, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. And so, yeah, keep your humble and remember who you are.
That's amazing, Jim. Thanks for telling those 2 stories. Like I said, these are some of the pieces that I took out from Jim's new book, Dream Makers. We're not going to go into any more of the stories. I don't want to give too much of it away. There's so much in there. There's so much insights. We've already been going for 45 minutes at the moment, and there's so much more to Jim's story. But I want anyone that's interested and to hear more of Jim's story and what he's done and what he's becoming and what he's doing is to actually go out and learn more about it. The biggest thing is I don't want the world to listen to Jim for 45 minutes here and go, oh, we know everything. We don't need to know more what he's doing and how he's impacting people's lives. There is so much more, and there's so much more out there, Jim, or from what Jim has experienced and everything else. And like I said, this is, to me, today's been amazing. You've been an inspiration. I can resonate so much with what you've done and gone through and the experiences. And like we said in the beginning of the show is fundamentally, you are living the life you're living the life you're supposed to have been living from listening to kids that we don't give the opportunity for them to have their say. So I just want you to think about that and go, we should allow those kids or young adults to have more of their say, and we support them in what they say, so that maybe not just the kids, but us adults can achieve what we're supposed to achieve, just like what happened with Jimmy, and that he can then go on, or we can go on as well, and do that more and more for the society we live in today.
Absolutely. You know, kids are fearless, and sometimes as we get older and we have a family and kids of our own, we get so busy living life that we forget to live, and we don't take chances anymore, and we don't take a shot at a dream. But we don't want to wake up one day when people are my age and go, what if?
Yeah.
What if I'd have tried? What if I'd have given it a little bit more? What if I'd have given it one more shot? Would it have happened for me? You'll have the answer one way or the other. You'll either make it or you won't, but you'll know. And so I think we need to be fearless, and we need to go out.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jim, for that. You know, and to anyone else that's out there, I'll make sure I put out Jim's details, but you can obviously find Jim across Instagram and most of the other social platforms with everything else. Like I said, Dream Makers, the book that's out at the moment, is amazing. Obviously, there's a hard copy and as well as Audible. I'm a Audible reader, so I did that this week and thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And for the last thing for today is just go out there and allow each other, allow everyone to live their fullest. That's all I ask. Allow each other to be inspired from each other. Allow all of us to live to our fullest potential, because enough of this rubbish of, if he's got success, I can't have it, so I'm going to push him down. Rubbish. There's enough success. There's enough money in the world for all of us to be what we're supposed to be and do what we're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, thanks again, Jimmy, for so much for coming on the show, for giving me, you know, a dream, sort of a dream to myself of being able to talk to you, and to everyone else that's out there. As always, as I say, stay beautiful, stay powerful. Until next time, see ya.